city. This is Charlie Rose.
Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has been the president of Brazil since 2003. His country is Latin America's largest and most influential. As the world's ninth biggest economy and largest producer of ethanol, Brazil has become a major force. Lula also has an inspiring personal story. He made history by becoming the first working-class leader of the world's fourth biggest democracy. We talked yesterday during his visit to the United Nations General Assembly. Tell me what you hope to accomplish here.
Well, the bottom line is that when we are in politics, what we expect to accomplish in each trip that we go is to try to closer the ties even more and try to build a trust relationship that in politics really matters. Confidence and trust relationship in politics is a sine qua non condition for the success of the political activity. And I came here for a dinner last night that I considered very important because it was for the first time that we raised a discussion on climate change. And we took that discussion to the major leaders in the world because up till then, this was an issue that was being discussed only by experts. So now the top leaders in the world attended this dinner. We had Angela Merkel, Bush, Zapatero, Socrates, Becky, myself, the president of Indonesia, the Russian minister, the Chinese foreign affairs minister, the prime minister from Japan. So I believe it was an extremely important meeting that we had last night. We haven't reached an agreement, of course, on that issue. There's a lot of divergence and there's not much in agreement.
But it's more about what to do than the nature of the problem.
Yeah, I believe that it's both things. Everybody understands that we have a very serious issue with global warming of the planet. No one wants to put the blame on, or everybody wants to be played the innocent and don't want to get the blame on. But we have to have the courage to discuss some things that are very important. For example, the industrial development standard of each country. And the consumption standard of each society. That is to say, it's necessary that the human being should diminish their impetus so that we can preserve more the raw materials that are produced by nature, and so that more and more we can make the world less degraded. And so it's a very complicated conversation because when the greenhouse effect goes to the atmosphere, the gases, there's no borderline, there's no boundary where it can reach. I don't know if the American gas is American or Brazilian. I don't know if it's Chinese or an Argentinian. It's in the air, and the fact of the matter is that it's causing a problem. The changes that we see in nature are visible every year. The phenomena repeat, and even in a much more severe way. So I believe that Earth, that has already given us so many things, deserves that we should stop and think a little bit, and so we should think about what we should do with the Earth to take it more seriously and more carefully, as if it was something that belonged to us, to administer through collective interest and public interest. That's how should we deal with the Earth.
What's the first step?
Well, the first step is to detect, to find out what could be done in a collective way. We're going to have a meeting in Indonesia at the end of this year. And in this meeting in Indonesia, we will try to find a way, a map road that could guide all the countries. And then afterwards, each country will try to take care of their own things, domestically speaking, because it's always a very difficult problem, because the rich countries are the ones that emit more greenhouse effect gases. So we have to think about what they have to do. And the poor countries, they have to combine preservation of the environment with economic growth, because behind that there's a great extreme poverty. And Brazilian Amazon rainforest, we have 360 million hectares in the legal region of the Amazon. But on the legal Amazon lives 22 million inhabitants, or a little bit more. And these are poor people that live in the rainforest, that they want to work jobs and they want to survive with dignity. So how can we make compatible development of a region like this one in the Amazon with giving access to people, to jobs, to salaries, and to material goods that they are entitled to have access? So this is the challenge that we face. And I believe that we do have the conditions all countries have, with a little bit of political determination, where we can resolve the problem.
But does it have to be a trade-off? Either you get jobs or you get a clean environment.
Well, we made a proposal in Nairobi. It's a proposal made by Brazil last year that the rich countries should pass or approve a compensatory fund for those countries that would manage to diminish the deforestation. For example, in the last 30 years, with the introduction of ethanol in the Brazilian, blended to the Brazilian gasoline, we are already not throwing to the atmosphere 343 million tons of gases of greenhouse effect. So due to the deforestation that we are managing to diminish in the rainforest in the Amazon, we managed to avoid, up till now, another 440 million tons of CO2. So we intend to reach the end of the year to 500 million tons. So this sacrifice that Brazil is undertaking to preserve its rainforest in the Amazon needs to have some financial compensation or trade-off, so that you can have a development model that is a clean development model, so that you can generate opportunities for jobs for those people that live under this situation, because otherwise they will be motivated to cut down trees, to sell the wood and the lumber. And who they're going to sell the lumber to? They're going to sell it to the rich countries. So I believe that all of us, from this meeting that we had in Bali for the at the end of the year, we can find the roadmap where we can show to the world, announce to the world, that we'll be more responsible, taking care of something that God gave to us.
You had a bilateral meeting with President Bush. Bilateral meeting. Is he responsive to your experience with ethanol, and is he prepared to recommend that ethanol be imported into the United States without a tariff?
Well, I believe that he is still prepared to convince the corn producers, the corn farmers here in the U.S. to produce ethanol. But he's not yet well prepared to reduce a tariff of 54% that is put over the Brazilian ethanol. But this is a process. This is a work in progress. It's a convincing process. It's a process that people should understand the reality and start to perceive that the introduction of ethanol in the energy matrix in the fuel area is a good for humanity. The European Union has decided till the year 2020 to introduce or to blend 10% of ethanol or biofuels in their fossil fuel. And in the U.S., that certainly has the largest car fleet in the world, will also have to introduce or to blend, or will do it domestically, or will have to purchase it from Brazil, or will buy it from African countries, or will have to buy it from Latin American countries. When I thought about the biofuels, actually, I was imagining that that would be the opportunity for us to have a reparation from the rich countries, and the developing countries could have this reparation with the less developed countries, the poorest countries of Africa, the Caribbean region, countries that did not have a good opportunity in the 20th century and that now could have a better opportunity in the 21st century. Well, we should think more thoroughly that for us to find oil in deep waters, a platform of 200,000 barrels a day costs $2 billion. So it's necessary to have highly skilled labor force to prospect oil in offshore platforms. And when you build the platform, the offshore, you create 6,000 jobs, 7,000 jobs. And then, after the offshore platform is working, you're going to create less jobs. Now, it's necessary to have a lot of technological knowledge to do that, to build offshore platform. Brazil has that technology. We mastered that technology. We're self-reliant in oil production. Petrobras, the state oil enterprise, is the company that has more technology into prospecting or explore oil in deep waters. And so can't you imagine that that is something fantastic? A citizen in any part of the world, he can be illiterate. He, with his own hands, he can dig a small hole and grow an oil seed. And from that oil seed, he will have the fuel for his car, without creating any implication with that gesture. So in the same way that the rich countries today import oil from the very few countries that do have oil production, there is also a possibility of the rich countries to import ethanol and biodiesel from the poor countries that can use part of their land to plant, to grow biofuels. So it's with this enthusiasm that I am passionate for the change in the energy matrix.
Okay, but did you notice any change
Mas o
in
senhor reparou
President
alguma
Bush's
mudança na
attitude?
atitude do presidente Bush? I did. I feel that President Bush is now more flexible. And since the visit he made to Brazil last year, and then this year again, and the conversation that we have had during this period of our term, I feel that President Bush is much more flexible now, is much more willing to discuss it now. Now, there's something that is the American dimension. This is a huge country, a large country, very rich country that masters a lot of technology, controls a lot of technology. So I believe that at the first moment, it's very natural that the U.S. would like to produce ethanol within the U.S. boundaries. On my side, I believe that the sovereignty of each country is untouchable. Each country is entitled to their sovereignty, and sovereign decisions are untouchable. But on the other hand, I believe that it is a mistake to try to produce ethanol from corn. I believe it's a mistake. Why so? Because corn is a basic animal food for many animals that are being raised or bred by the human beings. And it could make it very expensive, the price of the corn for all the rest of the world. The corn prices can go up, and above all, it could make unfeasible the purchase of meat because of the corn price, especially in those countries like Mexico and from Central America that eat a lot of tortillas. And so they're going to suffer the consequences. And then another important thing is that ethanol produced from sugarcane, it's cheaper than the ethanol that is produced from corn. Very well. We're just beginning the process. And let's see what happens in the next years. What I would like to ask for God is that we could manage not only the Americans and Brazilians, but all the world to take it seriously, this issue of building a new energy matrix in the fuel area. Because after all, it's not my car that's in need for that kind of fuel. It's the world and the planet that are in need to be more careful with Earth and the planet.
Right. I want to come back to the environment, but let me just talk about Brazil today. You're at the United Nations. You spoke there yesterday. Do you expect to get a seat on the Security Council?
Assento lá.
Eu penso que é uma necessidade.
I believe that it's a necessity.
Eu disse ao presidente Bush,
I said to President Bush, and I have said to President Hu Jintao from China, the Prime Minister, the Chancellor Angela Merkel, and President Sarkozy, it's a mistake to continue with the UN functioning in the same standard when it was created 60 years ago. Let's look to the geography of the world today, and we will see that the world has changed. Could you imagine that Russia today is smaller than it was before the revolution in 1917? That is to say, so why should we keep a certain group of privileged countries that are the permanent members of the UN Security Council? Why should we keep the veto right? If we want that the UN should truly represent with dignity and properly the interests of the countries of all the world, we should democratize the UN.
But people are in favor
Mas
of
as
that.
pessoas estão a
The
favor
question is
disso,
who
mas a
gets on
pergunta é
the
a seguinte:
Security
quem é que
Council?
vai entrar no Conselho de
Who is
Segurança?
prepared
Quem é que
to
está
vote
preparado
for
para
Brazil?
votar pelo Brasil?
Bem, as pessoas estão
Well, the
preparadas
people
em
are
termos.
prepared, I would say more or less.
Porque todo
Why
mundo
so?
fala,
Because
eu sou
everybody,
favorável.
I'm favorable. Yes, I'm favorable.
exemplo-
But, for example,
Por exemplo, a China
China.
não quer que o Japão
China doesn't want Japan to join in.
Right.
A Itália
Italy,
não quer que a
they don't
Alemanha
want
entre.
the Germany to go in.
Tem outros países
So,
que têm ciúmes
so
do
there are other
Brasil.
countries that are jealous
Quem é
of
que é?
Brazil. So who's
Brasil,
going to join the UN
México,
Security Council? Is it
Argentina.
going to be Brazil, Mexico,
Quem é
Argentina?
que entra da África?
Who's going to come from Africa?
África do Sul.
Is it going to be South Africa?
Nigéria.
It's going to be
Argélia.
Nigeria? Would it be Algeria?
O Egito?
And what about Egypt?
Ora, meu Deus do céu.
Well, oh my God.
Primeiro nós
Well,
temos que aprovar
first of all, we have
que
to
vamos
prove
democratizar o
that we will
Conselho.
democratize the Council,
E depois vamos
the UN
discutir
Security
quais os
Council, and then we'll
países.
discuss which countries should
O
join the
dado
Council.
concreto
The
é que
fact
o
of the
mundo
matter is that the
precisa
world
ser
needs
melhor
to be
representado
better
nas Nações
represented at the UN.
Isso é importante
And
para os
this is
Estados
very
Unidos,
important
é
for the
importante
US
para o
and it's
Brasil.
important for Brazil.
É importante para os
It's
Estados
important for
Unidos
the
porque
US
não
because
fica ele
The US should not
como a maior
stay
economia do
as
mundo,
being the largest economy
como
in the
o país de
world,
maior potencial
the country
bélico
that has
do
the
mundo,
most
uma
armed
responsabilidade
potential in the
toda nas
world,
suas
with all the
costas,
responsibility over its shoulders.
sabe? E isso vai
And
repartir
this
com
will,
outros países.
it will, then the US will be able to share with the other countries
Por
this
isso que
responsibility
eu
of being
estou
a
confiante.
powerful
Eu
military
tive
might.
uma
That's why I'm
reunião com o
confident. I had a
Sarkozy, ele tem
meeting with
declarado
President
publicamente
Sarkozy, and he publicly has
que ele
stated
vai colocar
that
como uma das
he will
bandeiras prioritárias do
use it
governo
as the
francês
priority banner for the French
democratização
government,
do
the
Conselho de
democratization of the
Segurança da
UN
ONU
Security Council
e o aumento do número
and
dos
the
membros
increase of the number of
permanentes.
seats of the permanent members at that
Inclusive
council.
defendeu o Brasil.
And even he would advocate for Brazil.
He'll advocate for Brazil?
Mas eu acho que o
I
próprio
believe that
presidente
even
Bush
President Bush
e qualquer
and
governo americano
any future
deveria defender o
American
Brasil
administration should also
pela
advocate for Brazil
importância que o
because of the
Brasil tem na
importance that
América
Brazil
Latina.
has for Latin America,
pela história de paz
because
do
of the
Brasil.
track record that Brazil has for advocating for
Brasil é
peace.
país de paz.
Brazil is a country that is in favor
No
of
Brasil,
peace. We're a peaceful
ou seja,
country in
nós
Brazil.
primamos,
We
sabe, e damos
we
prioridade à
give
política de
priority
paz.
for peace policies.
seria
So
importante
I
que o
believe
Brasil
that it would be very
participasse.
important for Brazil to participate.
Do you feel that Latin America has gotten short shrift from the world? We went from a Eurocentric, America-centric world to everybody talking about Asia, but not Latin America. Has Latin America been ignored?
Deixa eu lhe contar uma
Well,
coisa.
let me tell you a story.
Eu penso que
I
durante
believe-
esse tempo
Eu gosto de histórias. I believe that for a while,
nós tivemos na América
we
Latina
had in Latin America
uma elite
a
política
political elite
que
that
olhava mais
was looking much more
para os
towards
Estados
the
Unidos
US
e mais para
and
a
more
União
towards
Europeia
to the European Union
e menos
and
para
less
dentro de nós mesmos.
to within.
Nós agora nos
Now
descobrimos
we have discovered ourselves
enquanto continente.
as a continent.
Por isso o Brasil
And so
trabalha
that's why
para
Brazil is
fortalecer o
working to strengthen Mercosur bloc together with Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay. And so that's why Brazil is participating in the creation of the UNASUR, which is the integration of all South America.
E por isso nós estamos
And that's why we are
a
strengthening
necessidade
the
de que
need
países
for
como os Estados
countries
Unidos
like the U.S.
tenham uma política
should
ativa para a
have an
América
active
Latina e para a
policy
América do
towards
Sul.
Latin America
Que a
and to South
Europa tem uma
America,
política
and that
ativa para a
Europe
América
should also
Latina e
have a
para a América do
proactive and
Sul.
active policy for South America
seja,
and for Latin
se
America.
nós queremos
So if
paz,
we want peace,
se nós queremos
if we want
desenvolvimento,
development,
nós precisamos
we
olhar
need to look
a relação
and see
entre a
the
América do Sul e o
relationship that
restante do
exists between
mundo.
Latin America and the rest of the
Nós não
world.
podemos ficar
We cannot
trancados
only be locked
dentro dos nossos
within our
problemas.
own boundaries
E o
and our
Brasil
own
tomou uma
problems, and
atitude.
Brazil has made a decision.
Ou seja, nós criamos o G20,
We created the
nós
G20.
criamos o G4.
We created the
quê?
G4. Why
Porque
so?
nós queremos ter
Because we
incidência
want
nas
to
decisões
have
políticas
influence in the
mundiais.
political decisions that are made around the world.
Não é justo
It is not fair
que meia dúzia de
that
países
half
se
a dozen
reúnam.
countries would gather.
Qual é o
What
significado
is
de
the
uma reunião
meaning
do G8
of a
hoje
G8 meeting today
sem Brasil,
without Brazil participating,
China,
without China,
sem Índia,
without India,
sem África do Sul,
without South
sem
Africa?
nenhum.
Some of the
No.
largest economies in the world.
Sabe, não só porque
Not
somos
only
grandes
because we are
economias,
major economies,
mas porque
but
representamos
also because we
grandes
represent a
populações.
huge parcels of
E porque
population,
temos
a huge population, and we
interferência
do have interference. We have
políticas
something to say in the
regionais.
regional policy level.
É possível,
It is possible
é
then.
possível
It is possible.
imaginar
Is it possible to
qualquer
imagine
coisa
that
no mundo
anything that
comercial
happens in the
hoje
world of trade today
sem a China.
without China? Could you imagine that? China not participating in world
Sem a
trade?
Índia.
Without India?
Não
No.
é possível.
It's
sem
not
o
possible.
Brasil.
Without Brazil?
Então é
So
importante
that's why I believe
que
it's
haja
important
uma
that we should
evolução
have an evolution
na cabeça dos
in the
atuais
mindset
líderes
of the leaders of the world today.
e mudem de
And
padrão.
they should change the standards.
You have access to the world leaders. Are they responsive to the argument you make?
Veja, eu acho
Well,
que
I believe
respondem
that they,
bem.
yes, they respond well.
Deixa eu lhe contar uma coisa.
Let me tell you
Eu,
something.
na última reunião
In
que
the
houve
last
do
meeting
G8 em
that, the
Berlim,
last G8 meeting that was held in Germany,
nós tivemos uma reunião do
we
G5.
had the G5 meeting
E eu disse ao
in
primeiro-ministro
a separate
Singh,
meeting, and I told to Prime Minister
Disse ao
Singh from
presidente Hu
India, and I
Jintao,
also said to
disse ao
President Hu
Mbeki,
Jintao from
presidente
China
da
and
África do
President
Sul,
Becky from South Africa,
e disse
and I
ao
also said
Caldeirão,
to
presidente do
President
México,
Calderon from Mexico
que o Brasil não
that
participaria
Brazil
mais da
would
reunião
not
do
participate
G8
anymore in future G8
nos
meetings
moldes em que nós
in the
somos
same way
convidados.
that we're being invited now to participate.
Depois fui a Berlim
And then I went to Berlin,
e disse na
and
reunião
I said in the
que não
meeting
tinha sentido.
that it was meaningless
Ser convidado para
for us to be
almoço.
invited for lunch only at the G8
E nada
meetings.
mais do que isso,
And
as
nothing more than
decisões já
that. The
estavam
decisions
tomadas.
were all made already.
Yeah.
Agora vai ter uma
Now
reunião em
they're going to
Tóquio.
have a next meeting of the G8 will be in
próximo
Tokyo.
G8.
The next G8
Se
meeting
eu
will be
for
in Tokyo.
apenas para
If I
almoçar,
just go there for a luncheon,
será um almoço muito
it will
caro.
be a very expensive lunch to attend.
E será o
So,
restaurante
so are you going to say no? Keep your lunch.
E será o restaurante
And
mais
it will
longe
be
da minha vida.
the restaurant that I went to that is the most far away from my house.
Obviamente
So
que
obviously
a gente aceita
that we will accept
por
the
deferência.
invitation because we want to
A quem
show how
convida.
much we appreciate those that are
sempre
all involved.
deselegante
It's not elegant to
amigo convidar
a
você
friend
para
to
jantar e
invite you
você dizer
to
que não
a
vai.
dinner and you say
Mas
no
tem
to the
implicações
invitation.
políticas.
But there are political
Ou
implications in
seja,
that.
é preciso
It is necessary
mudar a lógica
to
do
change
G8.
the rationale of the
Não são
G8
mais
meetings.
8 países
It's not
que
anymore
determinam
8
a
countries
lógica
that
da
determine
economia
the
mundial.
rationale of the world economy today.
Não é mais o G8
It's
que
not anymore the
determina a lógica do
G8
comércio
that
mundial.
determines the world trade rationale.
Olha o potencial,
Look at the potential that
sabe, desses
exists
países que eu
of
estou
these
falando.
countries that I mentioned to
E
you,
nós vamos perceber,
and we will
sabe,
perceive
que o lógico
that
seria ter
the
o G8
logic
mais
would be have
5 seria G13,
G8
quem
plus
sabe
G5,
G14.
maybe it would be G14 more.
Let me just change to you as a political person. You came to the presidency in an unlikely path. Tell me what you have learned about the exercise of power.
Há muito tempo atrás,
A long time ago,
eu não tinha nem
I
pretensões
didn't even have the intention
de ser candidato a
to
político.
run for politics or to
Porque a minha
run
vida
for
é
a
tanto
post.
quanto
Because my life
eu
is, I would say,
contraditória.
there's a lot of contradiction in my
Eu
life.
não gostava de
On one
política.
hand, I didn't enjoy politics.
Não gostava
I
de quem
didn't
gostava de política.
enjoy people that enjoyed politics.
Jamais pensei
I
em
never
ser
thought
candidato
that
a
I
qualquer
would
coisa.
run for any office.
Jamais pensei
I
em ser
never
filiado a
thought
um
to be
partido
affiliated to a member of a political party.
E de repente tudo
And
isso
suddenly
aconteceu.
all that happened in my life. And I remember that in 1978, I was re-elected the president of the local metal workers trade union of the São Bernardo industrial city near São Paulo. And I promised to my wife that would be my last term, that I would go back to an ordinary life with her. That was in 1978. Now we're in 2007. That is to say, almost 30 years after that. And there was no way that I could go back to ordinary life. I believe that the fact that I reached the presidency of the Republic was one of those phenomena that sociology did not foresee. A country of the size of Brazil, it was against the odds, and it would be unpredictable that a metal worker could get out of a plant worker, and become the president of the country.
Did you feel like you were equipped for the job when you occupied the office?
Well, today, I can say thank God that I was not elected in 1989. Why so? Why do I say thank God? Maybe it's not the best term. It's because I believe that 12 years of waiting to be elected, I got very well prepared for that. I was able to prepare myself. So when I reached the presidency, I felt prepared to exercise power. I already have met all the previous presidents that came to office before me. I was acquainted with them, and maybe we can have people that can match, or people that have much more intellectual, educational background. But govern is not that. To rule is to know how to make decisions. To govern is to define what are the priorities. To govern is to exercise the role of the state, the government, without keeping the freedom of enterprise. And to govern is to define for who the government, the state, should govern to. And I felt that I was prepared for that. Of course, that between feeling that I was prepared and to exercise the government, to be in government, that's a quite different matter. So, I believe that I learned a lot in the first 4.5 years of my term. And I do have the humility. I'm humble to say that I learn every day. I believe in that. The other day they asked me how I felt, and I said, I am a permanent metamorphosis. I'm learning every day. I learn something. And I believe that God, when made the human being with just one mouth and 2 ears, it's for us to listen a little bit more than to talk. And I believe that I'm a good listener. I listen a lot, I talk a lot, and I learn a lot, and then I start executing.
What do you say to those critics on the left who say you have not accomplished their agenda? You have not been forceful on their side?
Let me tell you something. I was a man that had a great activism in labor issues, in the labor movement. And I could say that during a while, I was the main labor leader in the country. After that, I created the most important left-wing political party in Latin America. And in 20 years, we reached the presidency of the country. In this trajectory of the time, some people can't manage to go up that ladder of the time. And other people that are assuming more responsibility and are reaching higher steps of that ladder, they work according to the concrete objective reality that they face. When we are in the opposition, we can do politics with philosophy. Now, when you win the elections, you do politics governing. you're in a ruling, and the decisions on the national budget, for example, if you're going to give more money to one ministry to another or the department, you can't call a plebiscite or a referendum from the party to decide that. You have to make that decision on your own. Sometimes I have to make a decision on the international arena, and my cabinet ministers phones me. We have to make that decision on the spot. So I believe that we did fulfill our program, and we did even more than that. Our platform. It's important to remember that for me to win the elections, we had to make to become more flexible. I had to make certain concessions on things that I believed all my life. For example, just for you to understand, for almost 30 years in my life, I did the following speech. I will go and undertake a land agrarian development reform radical under the workers' control. I will implement land reform under workers' control. And then they told me the following. Well, Mr. President, well, instead of saying broad and radical land reform with all the rage that you're saying in your speech, why don't you say, I will undertake land reform and agrarian development in a peaceful way, through peaceful means? Isn't it much better to do it this way? Yes, it is. And with the nuances like that, we prepared a program with less adjectives, with things that are much more concrete, and we managed to win the elections. There are certain left-wing sectors that don't agree with us, because for us to reach the moment that we're experiencing today in Brazil, we made many sacrifices in the year 2003. We had to cut even on our skin, as we say, so that we can survive, because inflation was growing. Brazil had no credibility at the international level. We lost international credibility. We owed $16 billion to the IMF. And what did we do? I did as I used to do in my house when I got my paycheck.
Budget.
When I worked as a plant worker, I got back home with my salary, and I would open the paycheck in a closed envelope. How much do we owe? We pay all our debts. How much is left? What can we do with the money that's left? So let's use money for the transportation, leave something for the kids. And so if nothing is left, well, what can we do? In the government, we did the same thing in terms of our spending. If we want to restore the economy to grow back, we cannot leave inflation, come back for inflation. We have to control inflation by all means. So, what are we experiencing today in Brazil?
Exactly.
We don't owe any more money to the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. We don't owe money anymore to the Paris Club. We have $163 billion in reserves, international reserves, more than the U.S. even. And so we have an inflation that is under control, that is 4% a year, or 3.7% a year in Brazil. We have a growth in the 7.2% in the salary mass. The jobs, we have more jobs now that were created, so the employment went up. This means that we managed to combine the growth policy for our exports, but strengthening at the same time the domestic market. So our exports grew, but our domestic market grew. We managed to combine inflation control with economic growth and creating new jobs and income distribution. And so we're still far away to give to the Brazilian people the standard of living that they deserve. But the bases, the pillars are now in place so that Brazil can transform itself in a major world economy.
Lots of countries face the challenge you do. China and India, members of the BRIC. Economic growth is there, but they've got huge problems. Do the people of Brazil have the patience to wait for you to deliver on what you would like to from your heart?
I don't want them to have patience. I want them, they should demand more and more from me, from the government.
But can you deliver more and more?
Mas você pode realmente cumprir o que o povo exige, presidente? We are already doing that. We are already delivering. After my inauguration, January the 1st of the year 2003, I said in my inaugural speech, if when I end my term, my first term, and the Brazilian would be able to have a breakfast in the morning, have lunch and dinner, I would have already feel fully satisfied with my mission. Very well. We developed the Zero Hunger program. And within the Zero Hunger program, we created the family stipend of Bolsa Familia, and we are now serving 11 million families with that welfare program. We're talking about 44 million people, men and women. And in only 4 years, we managed to reduce, we have already fulfilled the Millennium Development Goals that was for the year 2015. We have already reduced
in terms of reducing poverty.
Em redução da pobreza, presidente. Yes.
When you look, good, you go.
Olha,
well,
eu posso lhe dizer uma coisa.
I can say to you something
Nós estamos longe
that we're still far away
de atingirmos
to reach
a perfeição.
Perfection.
Mas o que nós fizemos
But what we did in 4.5 years is much more than was done in the last 30 years in our country or in the last 40 years in our country at the level of social policies and welfare programs. The growth of the industry, the manufacturing industry, and the improvement of the quality of life of people is in the best level in the last 25 years. It's important to remember just one thing, that Brazil went through almost 26 years with its economy under stagnation. So what happened in these 26 years? People became more poor. The marginalized population grew. Crime went up. People that lacked hope. So these are the people that now that we want to extend our hand and give them an opportunity that was lost in the last decades. And now we want to give these people this opportunity, and we're doing it.
In context of that, what do you expect from the United States, the world's richest country, the world's most powerful country? What is it that you want President Bush and his successor to understand about Brazil in 2008?
Well, I believe much more than just for Brazil. I would like that the U.S. would have a more proactive policy and more active policy for the Southern American countries, especially for the smaller countries in South America. If we do not give a chance, an opportunity to these countries to make them grow economically speaking, to create jobs for these countries, smaller countries in South America, what will these people do in their lives? It's important to remember that we are experiencing a very important period of strengthening the democracy in the continent. Now that we don't have the fear of communism, now that the world is more comfortable, now that people have learned to have political disputes through democracy, exercise democracy, I believe that the U.S. should have a much more proactive policy vis-a-vis Latin America. And so that's why we are fighting at the World Trade Organization and during the Doha round, so that we can have a perfect combination. The U.S. on one hand would reduce their agricultural subsidies. The European Union will facilitate market access to agricultural goods. And we from the G20 will flexibilize our industrial goods. On the industrial goods side. So we're close to reaching an agreement. If we manage to reach an agreement, certainly who will win will not be the U.S., it won't be Brazil or the European Union. Who's going to win? The ones that have to win are the poorest countries or less developed countries in the world. This is what we want.
You went from being growing up very poor, becoming a successful union leader, a successful political leader. You now have the company and the privilege of among the powerful, among the establishment. Has it changed you? Are you different? Because the world you live in is so different than the world you came from.
Olha, Não, eu não mudei.
Well, I have not changed.
Porque eu
Why
sei
so? Because I
de onde eu
know
vim
where I came from,
e sei para onde eu vou.
and I know where I'm going back to.
Eu tenho clareza.
I have clarity about
Eu tenho
that.
clareza
I
quem
have the
é
clarity
efetivamente
who effectively
pessoas que eu
are the people
represento.
that I represent
tanto no Brasil
in
quanto
Brazil as also
nas viagens
in
internacionais.
my international trips.
They don't think that you have left them or forgotten them, the people you came from.
Sabe por que eu não deixei? Porque
You know
eu
why?
digo sempre que
Because I always
o
say
legado
that
mais
the
importante
most
que eu
important
quero na
legacy
minha
that I
vida
want to leave
política
in my political life
é quando eu deixar a
is when I
presidência,
leave the presidency
eu ser chamado
and
de
I'll be
companheiros.
called by brothers from
Pelos meus
my
velhos companheiros.
old brothers at the Union Hall.
Isso eu
And
não
this,
abri mão.
I will want this in my
E
life.
depois,
And,
uma coisa importante que eu
and
aprendi
another
nessas
important thing that I
reuniões,
learned in these meetings,
imagine você a primeira
imagine
vez
that you're going
eu
to
fui,
attend, the first time that I
G8
attended to the G8 meeting
em Evian.
in Evian in France.
Então, de repente, eu estava
And so
diante
suddenly
do
there I
presidente
was
Bush,
facing President Bush. I
da
was
Arábia
facing the
Saudita,
Prince of Saudi
do Tony
Arabia
Blair,
and Tony
do
Blair
Chirac.
and Chirac
Tudo figuras
and
que
all
eu só
these
via na
figures that I
televisão.
just watched them on
E de repente,
television. And
eu
then
lá,
suddenly there I was, a
metalúrgico, no meio de
metal
tanta
worker, a
gente
plant worker,
importante.
amongst
Aí a
all these
reunião começou.
IEPs. And then the
E
meeting
eu descobri,
started.
eu sou
And
igual
then I
eles.
discovered I'm like them.
Eles não são
They're not
mais importantes
more
do que
important
eu.
than I am.
Eles podem
They
presidir
could
país mais
rule a
importante do
more
que eu,
important country than my country.
mas eu
But
tenho a minha
as people, I
importância,
also have my importance.
porque eu represento o meu povo
Because I
também.
represent my people too.
E aí você aprende
And
a falar
then
de
you
igual para
learn
igual.
to speak in equal terms.
Sabe o que eu aprendi na
And
minha
you know what I
vida?
learned in my life?
Negociando,
Negotiating.
desde muito jovem. no
Since
Brasil.
young, at the bargaining table.
E é o que nós
And
tentamos
that's what we
exercer na
try to
política
do
internacional.
in international politics too.
Nenhum
No
interlocutor,
interlocutor by himself or herself
respeita
would respect
outro
another
interlocutor
interlocutor
que não se respeita.
that doesn't respect himself or herself.
Então, quando o
So,
Brasil vem
when
conversar com
Brazil
os
comes to
Estados
talk
Unidos,
with the U.S.,
ou quando o Brasil vai
or when
conversar
Brazil
com a
sits down to
França,
talk with France,
ou seja, nós temos que
we
conversar de
have to
igual para
talk
igual.
in equal terms.
Os nossos povos têm
Our peoples
interesses,
have
sabe, têm
interests
deveres e direitos,
and
mas
obligations
um
and
país não pode
duties
se curvar
and
diante
rights,
do
but
outro.
one country cannot bow to another one.
preciso ter
Cannot-
autoestima.
and so we have to have our self-esteem.
É preciso andar de
It is
cabeça
necessary that
erguida.
we should walk proudly.
Isso eu aprendi.
And this I learned.
Eu aprendi na vida
And I
a
learned
me
this in my
respeitar,
life to respect myself.
porque é me
Because
respeitando
if I respect myself,
que eu vou
respect
ganhar
the other.
respeito dos outros.
I will win over the respect of the others.
Ronald Reagan used to say, who was viewed by many Americans as a successful president now, used to say that he learned as much in his role as a labor negotiator in Hollywood than he did as an actor.
É bem possível,
It's possible.
porque
It's
grande
possible
parte
because
das coisas que eu
great part of the
decido hoje no
things that I
governo,
decide today in my government,
aprendi na minha
I
vida
learned them during my labor, in the labor movement.
obviamente que é
Obviously,
diferente
it's quite different
negociar
to you to
com
be at the
uma
bargaining
Ford
table with a Ford Motor Company
e negociar
and to be
entre Brasil
bargain
e
and
Estados
negotiate
Unidos.
between Brazil and the U.S. as countries.
São coisas muito
These
maiores.
are things that are much more
Mas foi
larger.
ali,
But it was
na
there
negociação
at
de
the bargaining
fábrica,
table, at the plant level,
representando os meus
representing my
metalúrgicos,
metal workers, my fellow workers,
que eu aprendi
that I learned
a arte de negociar.
the art of bargaining, the art of
Because the
negotiation.
pie is finite.
Veja, não dá para dar um pedaço para todo
Yes,
mundo.
the pie is finite,
Mas não é
yes,
justo
but it's
que
not
alguém
fair
sozinho
that
coma o
someone
bolo.
by itself eats the cake by itself, the pie by itself,
Ou seja, é
eats the whole
preciso repartir.
pie. We have to share that pie, split the
preciso criar as
pie. We have
condições
to
para fazer
develop
o
the
bolo ser
conditions so
maior
that we have
ainda
to build the
e
pie,
ter
the
mais
pie to
bolo
become
para
larger,
todo
make it
mundo.
larger.
Nós temos feito isso no
We have
Brasil.
been doing that in Brazil.
Se você
And
dia
if
for
you
ao
one day
Brasil,
go to Brazil,
eu queria que você
I would like
tivesse
you to
acesso
have
a
access
tudo que nós
to
fizemos de
everything that we
política
did in
social no
terms of social
Brasil,
policies and welfare
que
programs in
é
Brazil.
muita coisa.
That is a lot.
É muita
You'll see
coisa.
that it's a lot.
Tell me what you think your biggest failure in office has been.
Veja, outro dia me
Well,
fizeram
the
essa
other day
pergunta
they made me this question,
e eu disse o seguinte:
and I said the following.
eu
I
tenho o meu maior
have
sucesso,
the major success
tudo que eu fiz até agora,
is everything that I did up till now.
E o meu maior fracasso
And my major failure
é não ter feito
is not
o
having
dobro do que eu
doing
fiz
the
até agora.
double of what I wanted to do up till now,
E eu
or that
vou
I did up till
descobrindo a
now.
cada dia que eu posso
And I
fazer mais.
discover every day that I can do more and more.
Eu aprendi
And I learned
que se o
that
governante
if the ruler
não for ágil,
is not
não
quick
for
enough,
teimoso,
is not
e não
stubborn
estiver
enough,
brigando todo dia,
and fighting every
o
day,
governante é como se fosse um
the
trem.
ruler is like a train.
A máquina
The machine
é como se fosse a estação do trem.
is like the machine. The state machine is like the train
Então,
station.
a cada
And
hora
so
passa
every
trem.
time there's a new train going through that
Faz
train
barulho.
station, it makes a lot of noise.
E a estação
It
está
blows
lá
the
impávida.
whistles, but the train station is there, continues there, and the
O trem
train
vai
leaves
embora.
us. The train goes away,
E a estação está
and
lá.
then the train
Vem
station
outro
continues
trem.
there. Then another train comes
governo é a
in.
mesma coisa.
So in government, in the administration, it's
Você
the
tem
same
uma
thing.
máquina
You
pública,
have a public machinery,
sabe,
you have a
que ela é
government
quase que
machinery
eterna.
that is eternal
E os
almost.
governos são passageiros.
And the administrations
Então, quando você toma uma
are
decisão
transitory. So when you make a
E
decision
você não
and you
acompanha
do not
ela
follow up the decision
cotidianamente,
in a daily process,
6
the
meses
decision that
depois
you made
que você
6
tomou a
months after you
decisão,
made that decision,
você vai perceber.
you will
A
perceive
decisão não
that
não
nothing was
andou,
done, that
porque está
nothing moved
parada na
forward
gaveta de
because
alguém.
it's in the drawer of someone in the state bureaucracy, in government bureaucracy.
Então, eu aprendi.
So I've learned.
Agora, por exemplo,
Now,
nós
for
lançamos
example,
um
we have
programa de
launched
aceleração da
an
economia.
accelerated growth program.
São
We're talking about
252 bilhões de
$252
dólares
billion
investidos até
public
2010 em
investment to
infraestrutura,
be invested in infrastructure
urbanização de
projects,
favela,
urban
água
development in the
potável,
shanty towns,
coleta de esgoto.
and sewage and water supply of
Então,
drinking water.
eu criei um conselho
So
gestor
we have a managing committee for these
Coordenado por
infrastructure
uma ministra
investments, coordinated
no meu
by the
gabinete.
chief of staff.
participa o ministro da Fazenda,
The finance minister participated
Ministro
in
do
that
Planejamento
in the steering committee.
e o
The
ministro de
planning
cada
minister
área.
and the respective
Se é do transporte,
minister. If it's
participa, se é
transportation,
do
you will
meio ambiente,
participate. If it's from the
participa.
environment ministry, you will participate.
E cada ministro também tem
And
um
each
conselho
cabinet
gestor.
minister also has their own steering committee.
E eles se
And
reúnem a
they
cada
would
mês.
gather every month,
E a cada 4 meses
and every 4 months,
Todos
everybody
prestam conta para mim.
will be accountable to me how this project, this
Quantos
program is
metros de
going.
estrada foi
How
feito?
many meters of
Quantos
paved
litros de água
highways were
tirou?
built? How many
Quantos
waters
metros
were
de
built?
esgoto foram
Pipelines? How much
coletados?
sewage systems
Porque
were
senão-
collected? Waste was collected, and so on.
Senão os presidentes
Otherwise, the
terminam o
presidents,
mandato
they end their
e as
term,
coisas não
and
acontecem.
nothing happens. We don't deliver. Nothing happens.
There is also this issue, as you know, and it came up in your campaign for re-election, corruption.
A corrupção é um problema
Corruption is
sério.
a very serious matter.
E não é um problema do
And it's
Brasil.
not only a problem for Brazil,
problema do mundo.
it's a problem around the world.
Aonde é que a corrupção aparece
But
mais?
where corruption shows up more,
Quando você combate ela.
when you fight corruption.
Se você quiser
If
evitar a
you want to
corrupção,
avoid corruption
levantar o tapete,
and to lift over the
E varrê-la pra
carpet
baixo.
and put the dust under the carpet,
ela não aparece na
it
imprensa.
won't show up on the media.
Agora, se você
Now, if
prepara
you
a Polícia Federal,
Prepare the federal police.
contrata mais gente,
You hire more people for the
Investe
federal
na
police. You
inteligência.
invest in intelligence.
cria uma controladoria geral
A general controller's
República.
office and a general
Para fiscalizar
accountant's
os ministros
office to
e fiscalizar os
oversight the
estados e
ministers, the
prefeituras.
states, and the city authorities.
Estabelece uma
And if
relação
you
de total
establish
autonomia com
a
o
full
Ministério
autonomy
Público,
with the general attorney's office,
aí a coisa começa a
then
funcionar.
things start to work.
Aí a corrupção
And then
começa a
corruption
aparecer.
starts to
Porque nós
show up
estamos
because we
desmontando
are dismantling
verdadeiras quadrilhas que existiam
gangs
há 10,
and
15
mafias
anos
that exist
atrás.
already within the state machinery for
E
10,
ainda falta
15
muito
years,
por
and we still
fazer.
have a lot to do in this
E
field.
vamos fazer.
And we will do it. We will
Eu
fight
tenho dito
corruption.
todo dia.
And I've been saying every
Nós
day, we
somos homens
are
públicos
men of
para
public
fazermos as
life
coisas
to do the things
honestamente
in an honest
e
way
pensando
and
privilegiar,
thinking to privilege
beneficiar a maioria
and to
do povo.
benefit the majority of the people.
Se não fizermos
If
isso,
we do not do that
E
for the benefit
pensamos
of the
em nós
majority
mesmos.
and we think only on ourselves
temos que ser punidos.
in a selfish way, we have to be punished for that.
Por alguma instância,
And due to, for some reason, at some level,
até chegar à Suprema Corte.
so that we can reach even the Supreme Court.
I want to talk about Brazil and the world. Tell me what you think of Chavez.
Olha, eu tenho uma
Well,
relação
I have
muito boa
a very
pessoal
good
com o
personal
Chaves.
relationship with Chavez.
O Brasil tem uma relação
Brazil
muito
has
importante
a very important relationship
com a Venezuela.
with Venezuela.
Temos interesses
We
em
do
si.
have reciprocal interests.
Temos investimento
We
na
have
Venezuela.
investments in Venezuela.
E trabalhamos
And we have
para
been
que a
working
Venezuela
so
seja
that Venezuela
integrada ao
could be
Mercosul.
integrated to the Mercosur bloc.
Da mesma forma que
In
trabalhamos
the same
para
way
a
that we
Bolívia,
work
da mesma
for
forma que trabalhamos
Bolivia
para
to
o
join the
Equador.
Mercosur bloc and
seja,
Ecuador.
temos problemas
So,
políticos?
yes, we do have
Temos.
political issues. Yes, we do have
Mas na
political
América
issues.
Latina sempre
But in
vão ter
Latin
problemas
America, we
políticos.
will always have political
Porque somos
issues
um
because we
continente
are a continent
processo de formação
that
e
is in a
consolidação
process at
da
work
nossa democracia.
to consolidate our democracies.
É importante lembrar
It's important to
a
remember
quantidade de anos
the, how many years that the majority of the countries in Latin America were victims or under the rule of authoritarian regimes
Portanto, nós estamos
and
agora
dictatorships. So
aprendendo
now
a
we are
construir
learning, we're in a learning process to
democracia
build
sólida,
a sound democracy, an efficient democracy.
vamos construir
And we
na
believe
América
that
do
we'll manage to build democracy
Então, a relação
in
do
South
Brasil
America. So the relationship
com a Venezuela
of
e a
Brazil
minha
with
relação com
Venezuela and my
Chaves
relationship
é a
with
melhor
Chaves is the best possible relationship.
And what's your advice to the president, any president of America, in dealing with Chavez, who seems to be so strongly anti-American?
Veja, eu penso
Well,
que
I believe that
o Chaves
Chaves,
diz ter suas razões.
maybe he has some reasoning to be in that position.
Eu de vez em quando brinco
Once in a
com o
while,
presidente
I play with President Bush and make jokes with President Bush and with President Chavez too, because Chavez needs Bush to sell his oil.
Exactly.
E o Bush precisa
And
do
Bush
Chaves
needs
para comprar
Chavez to
petróleo.
buy their oil.
Eu não sei por que
And
brigam
I don't know
tanto,
why they
veja.
pick up so much on a
Mas de
fight.
qualquer forma,
But anyway,
eu estou convencido
I am
que
convinced
essa
that
briga
this fight,
que muitas vezes
that
tem
many times
uma certa exploração pela
there
imprensa,
is being a little bit exploited by the press, by the media, will not cause any damage to the democratic relations that we exercise today in all South America.
Finally, when you leave office, what do you know you will accomplish and what do you hope you'll accomplish? How will Brazil be different beyond its economics?
Se eu pudesse prever tudo
If I
isso,
could
seria
forecast
tão
all
bom.
that, it would be so good if I could forecast
Eu ainda
everything.
tenho 3 anos
But I
e
still
meio de
have
mandato.
3.5 years of my term.
Então veja uma coisa.
So
Quando eu terminar o
I
meu
believe
mandato,
that when I end my second
dia
term
31 de dezembro
on
de
December
2010,
31st of the year 2010,
eu terei sido o presidente
I
da
believe that I would have been the president of the country
que mais investiu
that
na educação
more
brasileira.
invested in education in Brazil.
Até 2010,
To the year 2010,
nós teremos
we would have
construído 10
built
universidades federais.
10 public universities.
Teremos feito 42
We would have
extensões
built
universitárias.
42 new university extension programs, and we would have built 214 vocational training schools, a plus more than what we have already existing in Brazil. This is an important data.
Em 93 anos,
In 93 years of the Republic in Brazil,
construiu
Brazil built 140 vocational training schools.
nós em 8 anos,
We, in just 8 years, we will manage to build 214 vocational
nós
training
estamos
schools.
fazendo o programa
And
de
we are also
desenvolvimento da educação.
having launched an educational development program, and we also launched
Educação à distância.
a distant education
Para
program,
formar o nosso
distant
educador.
learning to also educate our monitors and our teachers. We have the largest government procurement of books in the world. No government in the world buys the amount of books that we buy for the public education in Brazil. We're talking about 163 million educational books distributed for our students in the public education system. And more than that, the figures are huge. So what do I want to... How do I want to be remembered after I leave the presidency? I want to be remembered as someone that ruled Brazil,
Mais
governed Brazil,
dificuldades próprias de
with the
país
difficulties that of a developing country has,
com consciência de
but
que
with the
não pude fazer
consciousness
tudo
that I couldn't do everything
que poderia ser feito,
that could have been done,
mas que fiz.
but I did everything that was at my reach.
Eu quero encostar a cabeça
I
no
want to
travesseiro
lie down my head on the pillow
e dizer
and to say,
muito mais.
well, more
que ter
than
sido honesto
being
comigo,
honest with myself,
eu fui honesto comigo
I was honest with my people
e verdadeiro com ele.
and true with my people.
Aí,
And this
eu
is,
poderei morrer
then I can die easily, comfortably.
Thank you for this opportunity. It's a pleasure to meet you and a pleasure to talk to you about a great country. Thank you.
Obrigado.
Thank you.